Welcome to Writing a Rhetorical Analysis, the do's and don'ts. The first thing that I would like for you to remember is that you need to embrace the process. We're really focusing on the process of writing in this class. So there are some things that we're going to do. The first thing is the outline. Before you start writing the essay, you're going to be turning in the outline. Now the outline is going to be complete sentences. You're going to have a complete sentence for your thesis, complete sentences for your topic sentences, and a complete sentence for the concluding statement. Then you're going to be writing the essay. Please do not turn in a first draft of that essay. You need to take the time to revise and edit before you turn it in. And the final part of this process is the reflection. And you're going to be writing about a 250-word paragraph that explains this process of writing rhetorical analysis. What did you learn? What was difficult? What was easy? What confused you? How are you going to use this in the future? Those are the types of things that you would write in a reflection. In terms of the actual essay, there is a structure that I want you to follow. 3 things that you need to address. The first is the rhetorical situation. If you need more information on the rhetorical situation, that begins on page 92 in your text. The next item that you need to cover in the structure of your essay is the means of persuasion. Again, if you need more information, you can find that beginning on page 97 in your text. And finally, the rhetorical strategies. If you need more information, that begins on page 98 in your text. But these are the 3 elements of rhetoric that you must include in your essay. When you are analyzing an argument, these are the things that you look at, and you're not just going to be looking at what the argument says, you're going to be looking at how the argument was built. So, let's take a look at what the outline might appear to be. We'll start with the thesis. Although Smith's essay may anger some readers, his use of the tools of rhetoric ultimately builds a solid argument. We can already tell from this thesis that we're looking at the tools of rhetoric. That's our central idea. And we're saying that it is a solid argument, so we have a positive view of this particular argument. But nowhere in here does it mention what Smith's argument is. We don't need to know that. We need to know how he used the tools. Was it solid? Was it not solid? Was it shaky? You're going to be able to figure that out on your own. In terms of topic sentences, the first one tool of rhetoric that Smith uses effectively is the means of persuasion. Going back to the idea of tool of rhetoric, and now I'm focusing on the means of persuasion. In addition to the means of persuasion, Smith uses the rhetorical situation as a tool to establish his authority and convince his readers. Same idea, tool of rhetoric. Now I'm looking at the rhetorical situation. Though the means of persuasion and the writer's situation are important, it is Smith's mastery of the tool of rhetorical strategies that makes his argument airtight. Again, going back to that idea, tool of rhetoric, and now I'm looking at rhetorical strategies. Please notice that in each one of these topic sentences, there are transitions, so that these ideas are linked to each other in some way. And then finally we have our concluding statement. In the end, it is not simply what Smith says, but how he uses the tools of rhetoric to sway a hostile audience to consider an alternate view that make for a winning argument. So this is the type of outline that I'm going to be expecting from you. Take a look at it. You have it in your handout, but this is the type of level of critical thinking that I expect. So, let's think about how you can get yourself out of hot water. Let's start with what not to do. Don't simply restate the argument. I've read it, you've read it, we both know what the argument is. I want you to tell me how that argument was crafted. Which of these tools of rhetoric were used? The second thing, please don't use a bunch of quotes. You will probably only use very sparingly little pieces. If you're putting in full sentences, you're not doing it right. So we don't want that to happen. So let's take a look at an example of what not to do. In paragraph 1, Smith tells the reader, quote, "We should feel sorry for today's students," end quote. He states, quote, "Students just like to copy and paste," end quote. He goes on further, quote, "More than 50% of students simply use the original text in their writing," end quote. Smith argues that, quote, "Original thinking has gone by the wayside, that students have a difficult time thinking on their own," end quote. He adds, quote, "I have taught in colleges for more than 30 years," end quote. And I know you're thinking that this is this hyperbolic, over-the-top example to show you what not to do, but I actually have papers that are turned in that are nothing but a bunch of copy and paste with a few words linking them together. We are not doing any of that. So, in order to make your instructor happy, this is what to do. Use the language of rhetoric, the language that you've learned from the text. Also, summarize and paraphrase. There's no need to have any big blocks of copy and paste. If you find those sentences coming into your writing, you need to go back in and think critically and use summary and paraphrase. So let's see an example. Smith puts the means of persuasion to good use as he builds his argument. Again, focusing on that idea of the means of persuasion. So let's go on. First of all, he employs ethos, setting the stage for his authority in the topic of declining critical reasoning. To establish this ethos, he calls upon the decades that he has taught in higher education. In addition, Smith understands the need for pathos. His word choice elicits a sense of sympathy when he uses phrases such as, quote, "feel sorry," end quote. Finally, Smith brings in logos to really drive home his argument. Citing statistics from his university, he maintains that more than half of the students rely on copy and paste rather than taking the time to think more critically and paraphrase or summarize. This is where I want your paper to be. If you'll notice, there's only one little tiny bit of a quote. Now, if somebody is using a repetitive word or phrase, it might be a good idea to bring that in. But when you find yourself shifting into long sentences, you're not analyzing, you're just restating. So as always, ask questions. Remember, I am only an email away, and I'm more than happy to get you back on track. So, good luck, sally forth, have fun, and if you have questions, you know how to get a hold of me.